Hello, everybody. Welcome back to SHC TV. I am Secondhand Coke, and today we are going to be starting on the long promised handwriting analysis. So let's head there. Okay, there's a lot to look at when it comes to handwriting, believe it or not. So I intend for this to be a 1 and 3 part exercise. We'll be looking primarily at Meghan's handwriting and revealing her pathology and all that is hidden underneath those spindly little letters with the weird slashes on top and the everything else that strikes us as weird about it. But we'll also be taking a look at some of the other royals' writing, including Catherine Williams, the Queen's. I think I've got some of King Charles's there. If not, I will. But we'll take a look at a lot of people's, including mine, just as a baseline, and just to take a look and give you a real short course in how you can do this when you take a look at handwriting, if it's ever something you've had an interest in doing. Now, of course, this is not scientifically accurate. This is more of a pseudoscience still. I know they use it in the court of the law, but that's more like a very trained graphologist looking at different things than not trying to find personality in handwriting, so to speak, but more looking for congruency and shape and size and everything to try to guess whether or not one person's handwriting is the same as another's or written by the same person. So that's that. But if you will just hold on for a little pretentious opener here, we will get started in just a few minutes. Thanks for joining. And if you're with me right now, please go ahead and like, subscribe, and share. And if you're with me at the end, then that's all the more reason to like, subscribe, and share. See you in just a second. Okay, as I said, this is going to be a 3-part video series. So once I do this part, I will fire up 2 other versions that address different parts of handwriting. There's just too much to address all in one sitting. So today, what we're going to look at is signatures, what size means and how it matters. The slant of a handwriting and what that means, what the spacing means between letters, between words, between lines, and also the zones of the page and what it means, where people put most of the weight of their writing, which zone they choose, often gives or is supposed to give us a certain insight into their psyche. So when we do signatures, we'll just be taking a look at a few members of the royal family, Catherine William, Meghan, Harry, me, and I'm not a member of the royal family, in case you didn't know, but I just threw mine in there for context. And then that's all we're going to look at. Then for the size, slant, spacing, and zones, and for most of the other portions of the 3-part video, I'm just going to look at Meghan's, because hers, dear God, is enough for any of us to be getting along and finding craziness in handwriting. So that's the plan. Okay, let's take a look at signatures. The signature that you use to write at the end of your checks or to sign any documentation, that one piece of writing that you tend to offer on its own, it is ostensibly what a person wants to show the world about themselves. It's your 2-second introduction to show people what you want them to see about you. So here is Secondhand Coke's signature. There are a few things you can ask yourselves about signature. to get some idea. And remember, this is how people want to be seen, not necessarily how they are. So the first thing you can ask yourself is, are they using cursive or printed text? And if they're using cursive, is it formal cursive or is it kind of freestyle? I use a freestyle cursive. Um, and what that's supposed to mean is somebody who is practical. You'll see somebody using a freestyle cursive. They'll link some letters together, some they won't, and it'll usually fall along the lines of what makes sense in the moment and what doesn't make sense in another moment. Another thing you look at is the angle of the writing. Does the person shift their angle like right toward with the slant? Is that the different? No, I want to, with the angle, I want to talk about how they position their signature on the paper. Do they keep a very steady line? You always want to have people do handwriting tests on unlined paper. So when you see that, you'll see they either tend to slant or angle their writing upward, in which case that usually denotes an optimism, a lot of dreams, a lot of high hopes, a lot of, yeah, just what you would think by somebody who tends to focus up in the world versus someone who spends their life looking down. Somebody with a lot of hopefulness and with a lot of expectation and a positive view of the world, or at least that's what they want them to see if their signature angles up. Now, if their signature angles up, but the rest of their writing doesn't, that's telling you something a little different. We'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, the next thing, mine is very straight across, which is usually telling somebody who keeps their head on the ground, very practical, very reasonable, tends to be governed by thought rather than feeling. That's what that tends to suggest. Okay, another thing you want to think about is size, because size matters. The bigger somebody writes, especially in their signature, the bigger they want to be seen. Now, sometimes you'll see this weird combination of small letters and big capitals. There again, it that denotes a more realistic view of the self, but somebody who wants to make a big impression nonetheless. They just don't, trumpet themselves beyond what they feel they deserve. If they come in with a big first capital letters on their first and last names, that usually means a strength of character, a desire to be seen and to command respect, but also a willingness to see one's own faults and flaws and to learn and grow from others and to respect other people's need for respect, etc. Okay, the next thing you want to think about with a signature is legibility. Can you read it or can you not? If you cannot read it, that is because a person who makes their signature easy to read is someone who wants to make themselves easy to know. They're being totally clear. They're showing you who they are, and there's no, smoke and mirrors or anything behind that. Now, this isn't to say that people with illegible signatures are dishonest. Very often, illegible signatures have quick minds. They're just trying to move on to the next thing. They can't be bothered to, really spell out their signature to others, especially if they're in a situation where they're writing their signature down fast, one after another after another. You figure these type of people often figure their work will speak for themselves. So just because if you have an illegible signature, it doesn't mean that you don't want to make a good impression or that you want to play games with people. It could just be that you're very busy and important, and that your identity will come through your work, not so much through the little pile of letters that you put on a sheet of paper to show who you are. Moving along that same line, if someone conveys a full signature that or initials, that also is a sign as to how much they want you to know, how straightforward they are being with their identity, and how much opening they are giving you here at the start. Someone who just writes out their name without all initials, or I think about E. Cummings, the poet, who does the E's in lowercase, and that's a guy that's playing games with you. Someone who just writes out their hand, and there's no mystery to it. That's just someone being open with you, not playing games with you, and not playing games around your identity. Someone who uses initials may also be very guarding of their privacy. So that is a legitimate means why someone might decide not to give you their full name. Embellishments or flourishes. You'll see Secondhand Coke does not have those, but we know Meghan Markle does. What they mean, basically, right now, all you need to know is the more flourishes you see, the more complicated the personality that wrote those particular embellishments. So you see somebody who comes with a very dressed up, slashed up signature. This is a complicated person who wants to make things complicated. Just probably thinks a little bit extra of themselves. And you'll just have to see in your interactions with them if that is borne out. Okay, the last thing is the slant. So if it is slanted to the left, that is typically meant like the letters all point to the left. Like, yeah, mine are straight up and down. So, but some people have their slant go to the right. That usually means an extroverted personality. And some people have their slant go to the left, and that usually means an introverted personality. Now, again, we're talking about a signature here. So it could just be that a person wants to look extroverted or look introverted, or in the case of people who write up and down without a slant, they tend to be very steady minded, very conscious of ruling with their mind and not so much with emotions. So you don't see them tend to get very emotional one way or another, whereas someone who slopes or slants right will tend to withdraw in conflict, whereas someone who slants left, if you're looking at it, let's see, if they slant right and you're looking, I got it backwards because I don't know my left and right. I'll work on it. But if, as you're looking at it, the slant is to the right, they're extroverted. They tend to rule with their emotions and go into conflict. If they slant left, they tend to hide back from emotion and from conflict and just kind of stay hidden away from all like that. And the last thing you want to consider when talking about signatures is how much does the signature set itself off from the actual writing itself. If there's a big difference between the signature and the writing, there's a big difference in who the person you're talking to that you don't know versus how that person comes out in regular dealings. There's likely also a big difference between how that person sees themselves versus how they are seen by others. I had a friend who had this very mature, very, illegible signature, and she's still a great friend of mine to this day. So it's not a bad thing. Um, and then when you look at her normal handwriting, it is almost a, a more childish print. And so it was interesting because it seemed like it was this desire to seem very grown up when in her personality she was very, childlike. I won't say childish because she was mature, but there was something childlike about her. She was very small, 4'11", and she just had a happiness about her that reminded you of children, and so she just wrote this great big adult signature to go along with it. So that's what you'll be looking for when we take a look at the handwriting and the signatures of the rest of our cast here. Okay, the first one we're going to analyze is from my hero and yours, Catherine Middleton, now Catherine, Princess of Wales. We have a letter here and we have her signature. Now, granted, it's an old signature, and I will bump in the new one in a later slide so that we can look at it more clearly. But it kind of is the same. Her new signature is basically just Catherine, and it looks just like the Catherine there before that, Middleton. She writes, "Dear Sir, thank you for your kind hospitality at Wimbledon last week. My friend and I had such a fantastic time, and it was great to be able to enjoy the day." Maybe I shouldn't try to read all this because it might take a little time that we don't have. But I'm sure it's a very lovely lady, a very lovely letter written by a very lovely lady, and that she, in this case, is saying thank you to someone for being allowed to be at Wimbledon. I wonder at this point if I guess it's before the marriage, so I bet she would not have been patron of Wimbledon at that point. So it's probably an exciting honor for her. So, but let's take a look at her signature. First of all, is it cursive or printed? And if it is in cursive, is it formal or pre-style? Well, it is in cursive, but it's formal. So all the letters connect at the points where they should. We'll talk about what it means based on where I dots and T bars are crossed, but that's an entirely different level of analysis. So we'll do that in a later episode. But otherwise, it's just straightforward cursive Catherine, and indicating a very straightforward person who wants to be seen in her signature as being straightforward, easy to understand, easy to get along with, and easy to read, as it were. Okay, so the angle where she writes pretty well going straight across the line. Now, it may well be that in writing this thank you note, she put it on top of a lined paper so that her arch or her slant, her angle of writing would go straight across, as that's considered to be kind of the nicest looking and the smoothest. Again, if she does naturally just write straight across and she doesn't write at any other kind of angle, um, it just it indicates a great deal of self-control. It indicates it indicates a self-control above all things, and a desire to take time and express what is meant to be expressed. She's not in a hurry. She's not in a place of high emotion or low emotion. So this is somebody writing from a very secure, very stable, very calm frame of mind. And that's what you can tell by the angle. Now, other than the angle, we have the slant of her letters. She writes with a rightward slant. So her letters all kind of tilt to the right. And that usually indicates extroversion. So she is a person who feels comfortable around people. She gets energy from being around people. She finds it easy to talk to people. She doesn't necessarily, and which is not to be misconstrued with finding it easy to talk in front of people. That's a totally different skill. But as opposed to being out socially, she would just as soon be out with friends having fun than being by herself in a room reading a book. She's an extrovert, and we can see that during her walkabouts. She's very good at engaging with people young and old alike. So you can see that there in her handwriting. The size of her handwriting is medium. So it's average, basically. It doesn't overwhelm, it doesn't go, if you were to kind of imagine imaginary lines on that particular paper that she's written on, she stays right in between those lines. She doesn't go above or below them. She stays in what we're going to know at one point as the zone, and we'll talk about what the zone means in our episode later this week. But as a person with average handwriting, she is social, but she's not opposed to time alone. She values a traditional life and usually works and achieves just enough at work. So she's not somebody who would have ever striven to be the boss or the Duchess of Cambridge or the Princess of Wales, for heaven's sake. She's someone who would have taken a job. Probably she was more likely wanting to be a mother, a stay-at-home mother. That seems to be, her trajectory. At least it's been Pippa's trajectory. And Catherine's done a great job with what was required of her based on the man whom she married. But I don't think there's anything to suggest that she wouldn't have been happy if she had found the right man, that man did not need for her to work, that she would have been happy making a home and raising her children and staying out of the public eye. And her handwriting indicates that she likes to work. She finds value in being productive, but she's not ever trying to lord it over people or be in charge of people, which is, I think, an actually good trait to have in your future Queen of England. I think the best leaders are those who kind of find leadership thrust upon them, to reminisce about Shakespeare. So that is where is with regard to the writing size. Okay, legibility. It is legible. I was just worried when I got started there that I wouldn't be able to, that I'd face some of it that I couldn't read, and then it would just delay the whole video while I try to stumble my way through the document. But you look at the last paragraph. I do hope the end of the tournament runs smoothly and this fantastic weather holds till the end of the week. Thank you again for making it such a fun and enjoyable event, or something like that. So yeah, it's completely legible. There's not anything it's not like reading a doctor's note or anything like that where you're like, what the what? No, she's got a legible handwriting, which means she's a person who wants to be straightforward. She wants to be understood. She's not writing so fast that she can't control her legibility. And that just shows, again, a person who wants to be of service and to make things easy for the people that she is around. Okay. Full signature or initials? Well, in this case, she gives us her full signature, Catherine Middleton. Later on, though, she only does Catherine, and that is because she's a royal. So that's not done out of any desire to be mysterious or to be going by so fast that she can't take the time to write out her full name. She is Catherine. So, and it's straightforward. There's no letters that are any more big than others. It's just a very, very straightforward signature there. This woman seems to very much be who she presents herself to be. You don't see any embellishments or flourishes, so a very uncomplicated character. And is her handwriting similar or different to her regular handwriting? Her signature seems to be exactly in line with the way that she writes the rest of her correspondence. So again, everything with this woman says that when you have her in front of her, she is who she is, and you get what you get, and that you can trust in that. She's steady, and yeah, great handwriting for what seems like a great woman. Okay, so now that we've done Catherine, let's move on to William. This is a note, presumably, that William wrote in remembrance of the service of some veterans. And it is signed with his signature, which looks very much like Lily. I mean, we can tell based on the I dot placements that there are two I's there, and can put together that there's an M going on there. But it's definitely a much more interesting signature in terms of what we can analyze. So, first of all, is it cursive or printed formally, and is it cursive or printed? And if cursive, is it formal or freestyle? This is printed, and this isn't even printed. This is printed freestyle. So, anybody going freestyle he's got a desire to be who he is, to do it how he wants to do it. And this is the way he's chosen to write his name. It goes fast for him. It looks right for him. He kind of tucks that M, the ending of the M at the end of his name, up under his name. The W looks like an L. There is a desire here with William to hide things from those with whom he is just sharing a signature. He's not, putting everything out there straightforwardly like he would be if he just wrote straightforward William in a way that we can clearly see it. We can clearly see it, but it takes a little bit, and so from that there is some compunction within William to want to behave a little differently than is expected. And we can see that in the signature that he gives. In terms of the angle, again, I can only assume that when they write these up, that there are like lined cards underneath that help them keep a straight line. If not, it indicates that he is very steady, that he is not hurrying. He is not He's trying to make this look good and to stay in a straight line as it's supposed to. I think what's probably more likely there is he's using a card to keep the line straight. But if he is doing that, then we know what that means, that his slant is very even keeled, and which is supposed to accompany a mind that is very even keeled. So not too much excitement, not too much solemnity, someone who's there doing duty straightforwardly and communicating that on that card. Okay, so with regard to slant, William writes up and down. So you don't see any introversion as you would if his slant went to the left, nor do you see extroversion as you would if the slant of his letters went to the right. Instead, you see somebody who is very guarded in their emotions, who is run more by their brain than their feelings, so to speak. So, someone who is very self controlled, someone who likes to talk to people but could just as easy spend some time alone. These are all the signs that William's giving us through his signature and through this little blurb of handwriting that he has. Aside from his signature, he's very legible, which indicates oddly or ironically that, his letter in memory of those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom, totally legible. There's nothing I had to struggle through even for a minute. And that indicates that he wants his messages to be very straightforward and clear. But that signature, he wants to play a little bit of a game with whoever's looking at it, I think. Subconsciously, surely, but he wants it to be clear that there's some William that's being held back. And what he tells you true, he tells you from his heart, but he's still not ever going to tell you everything. And you can see that in this amalgamation of a very straightforward, very legible handwriting, yet a signature that seems to want to rename him Lily for some reason. I don't know. All right, full signature or initials. He does his full signature, which is his first name. We know why he does that. Again, his partial or kind of warped spelling of his first name makes things a little more adventuresome, but he does not use any embellishments or flourishes except for that downstroke at the end of his M. So this is not a man who puts on airs. He's not a man who is complicated to deal with or who wants to be handled with kid gloves or treated any other way than directly. But he does want to hold some things back from the public, from media, from anyone who just sees his writing and his signature, lest anyone believe they get the full William. I don't think anybody gets the full William based on this. Catherine probably gets the full William, but very few people do. Okay, so is his handwriting similar to his signature? The stroke, the weight of the stroke, the angle of the stroke. Trying to look to see if there's an I in there. That I is a little different. In fact, it's even dotted differently. So there's a little difference there. But again, the person, yeah, I think we've seen it enough and talked about it enough. William is a person who shows you what he wants to see. He's not trying to hide things or play games, but he's also not trying to give you his life story either. So that's what we can tell from this, little blurb and William's signature. Okay, here is Harry's. He has written an instruction to Meghan, it looks like. Meg, when may I get my Xbox back, please, ma'am, from Harry. Oh no, this is, I'm not sure that this is a real sample of Harry. Yeah, actually, I'll tell you, it's not a real sample of Harry's handwriting. I was just screwing with everybody. I wrote that. Let's go on to Harry's real handwriting. Okay, May wonders never cease. Harry has written a nice long letter here. I am not going to try to read it because I'm afraid it will be illegible. But in terms of Harry's signature, it is in cursive, but it is not formally in cursive. The letters do not connect where they're supposed to, nor are they shaped how they're supposed to. It's more like one of that half-ass cursives that sometimes people do at the end of their signature or at the end of words, where it's just like, hey, is how he does his name. So, basically, again, a kind of muddled identity there being projected to those who see just his signature. Now, regarding to his angle, how it's all on the page, again, I'm not even sure if it's worth talking about this because I think these people are overlaying on straight lines, because his is pretty much angled. If anything, it might be slightly angled downward, and downward angle does tend to indicate a depression or less, or a negativity or a pessimism in life. And his does seem to angle ever so slightly down, but not enough to where I can tell if he just messed up writing on the lines that somebody put behind his blank sheet of paper there, or if he really is those things and that's just how he writes. The slant of his letters are right up and down. So, again, neither an extrovert nor an introvert, someone who scarily seems to be operating based on his head rather than his emotions. I would like to see some love letters to Meghan. And in fact, between now and when I actually take a look at this type of analysis in a written like prose rather than in just a signature, I might try to find that, because I have a feeling when he's in his Meghan era, I bet his handwriting transitions to where it leans to the right and where he's motivated by his emotions more. That would be my guess. Right here, though, at the time that this particular letter was written, that was not his MO. So the size of the letters, he stays in his lane. He's not somebody who tries to stand out in public. He doesn't try to overstep his boundaries. And again, it would be interesting to see how he writes now. I would say even now that is true. Meghan sends him out to talk to 60 Minutes. And then she sits back there and smiles and knows that she'll never get called out for anything that's said because she sent Dum Dum out to do it. But, other than that, the size is not the type of writing. Usually people with giant writing, they get into people's space and they are obtrusive and they can be assholes and they don't know their own place, and so they don't stay in it. Now, regarding the legibility of this, it's a bit small. I just wanted to put a note with all your tickets to whatever. And to tell you how much William, Catherine, and I are looking forward to seeing you. Yeah, it's pretty legible and pretty well written. I wonder if Harry's nanny wrote that for him or if he did it himself. Good job, Harry. So the legibility indicates wanting to be understood. His signature doesn't necessarily, but whatever. So, does he use his full signature or initials? He uses his first name. He does not use all the letters of his first name. And he gives us one of those embellishment flourishes. And when people embellish and flourish their signature, it tends to indicate that they want to be treated like they're a little more grand than they are. We'll see, or we can see how that's worked out. But in terms of the similarity between his handwriting and his signature, they are pretty much the same. So I don't see any indications of any kind of deception or any desire to present himself, at least at the point in life when this letter was written, which was around the time it would seem that he, William, and Catherine were, always together, that he was a person that he liked, and that who he was who you got. And again, next time I'll work on finding a letter from around the time that Meghan came around to see if that changes or not. We'll just have to see. Okay, last one we want to see. Or who knows if we want to see it, but it's the last one we're going to see, and then we're going to stop handwriting analysis for today. So the letter says, "Dear Matt, since making notes on a normal planet last fall, it instantly became a forever old favorite. When I knew I would be guest editing the September issue of British Vogue, I knew you had to be a part of it. Thank you for being a force for change. The world needs more of you, Meg." Because she didn't write her name out. Okay. The signature itself, it is cursive. It follows the rules of cursive. So there's that. Everything goes straight across the page. So there's that. That shows a lot of control and a lot of desire to control how you are seen, including how your writing is seen when you show it to somebody. In terms of the letter slants, she slants right. This is the slant of the extrovert. I'm a hugger, remember? I'm a hugger. This is handwriting, I mean, true to her word, that wants to reach out its spindly ostrich arms and just kind of suck you in to this sticky, suction cup type hug. I can see it. You can see all that in that writing. In terms of the legibility, she sacrifices some legibility for all of those embellishments, and indicating she does not always want to be understood. She doesn't. She doesn't want to be understood. She doesn't want us to understand what she's doing. She doesn't want to be somebody who is, down to earth, salt of the earth, easily understood, easily grasped, just like everybody else. She uses her full signature instead of initials, so she at least isn't cagey that way. But she obscures so much writing with those embellishments and those flourishes that they obscure the meaning of what she's saying. And that's what happens in her life. We can see she puts so many embellishments on things, so many embellishments upon her parenting stories, upon her birth stories, upon her outfits, upon her, party for no kids, her TV shows, all of that it obscures the whole point of what she's doing in the first place. So you can see her handwriting bears that out very well. And we'll look more specifically next time at just how it does that. But the rule is that what you get there in that signature with her and what you get in that letter is who she is. And she's going to confuse you just like that letter is. She's going to suck you in for octopus suctiony hugs like that letter does. And she's also going to prick you with the little embellishes and pokes and prods and teeny tiny, no circles in her loops. There's no room for anything else there. It's just prickly. And when we talk about the zones of writing, she is all in both the upper, the middle, and the lower zone, meaning she is in everybody's business. She won't stay out of anybody's way. She doesn't know how to stay in her lane, and that is who we are dealing with. And so that is handwriting analysis just on the signature level with these people. So thank you for joining me. I will come back with more handwriting analysis in another few days. We've got 3 to 5 parts that we'll be doing this segment in, and now we've got 1 down and 2 to 4 left to go. So all other analyses will be taken from samples of Meghan's handwriting solely. So, and that'll start with the next episode. So that I just wanted, for the sake of signatures, to give you a variety so that you could see what the variety is about. So if you enjoyed this, I thank you for joining me and sticking with me, and I hope you'll remember to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, comment, and all that good stuff. Otherwise, I will see you next time with some more handwriting analysis. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.